Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, or good evening, whatever time of day that you're watching this recording of this presentation that we just did for our mentees and mentors of the Prep Connect program at UCF Rosen College. My name is Giovanna Gorra. I am a Rosen alumna. I graduated in 2008 with my hospitality degree and then moved forward into the progression of my master's degree, which just completed August of 2020. So I went back to UCF and got my professional master's in management with a focus on human resources. I started in the hospitality industry, although hopefully you're seeing the presentation and can click on my LinkedIn to get the full story. But honestly, my hospitality industry career started in PBX at the front desk of a hotel and worked my way through in entertainment, worked my way through hotels, through operations, in a spa, human resources. I even had the privilege of getting into training and development and opening multiple hotels around the world. Honestly, it has been such a wonderful ride. And most recently, about 5 years ago, I joined the corporate world. Where I am now talent acquisition manager or a recruiter, if you will, for multiple regions. So it is such an honor to be here and to share some information. Truly, that was based on feedback from some of our mentees that are now diving into this virtual world, which is becoming our new norm. And there are so many things to go over about virtual professionalism or just how to maintain yourself as you're going through this environment. But we try to narrow it down to some key tips that I think could really help you, whether it's navigating through a virtual interview, which is what our main focus will be on today, or just, virtual environments in general, whether it's class or it's meetings, chats with your family, etc. So we're just really going to dive into the information here and hopefully get you what you need to help you move forward and feel more confident and comfortable in the virtual environment. So let's just dive right in. So for us, honestly, there were a lot of questions revolving around what, where, who, why, how. So we're just going to dive into some basics first. So the question is how do you prepare for a virtual interview? And the answer to that, honestly, is very similar to how you prepare for an in-person interview with just a few tweaks. So going through the basics, you're going to start with yourself, understanding who you're interviewing with. What's the name of the person? What's their role in the company? You can maybe look for them on LinkedIn, see if you can learn a little bit about them. That is helpful, but understanding who your audience is it the CEO of the company? Is it an HR representative? That is just really good information to know. And then, of course, what are you interviewing for? So as a recruiter myself, I've had many interviews that are scheduled where I go to talk to the person about, the role itself, and they absolutely have no idea what they even applied for. And, most of us can be guilty of this, where you're going online and you're in search of a job, especially now, and you just start to apply for everything that you see that you think would be a good fit, and it is easy to forget. But by the time you get scheduled for an interview, you should know what it is that you're interviewing for so that you can understand what questions you'd want to ask the hiring manager or the recruiter that is there to hopefully give you a job. So definitely understanding the what is a huge factor. Now, where will it be hosted? Obviously, virtually, it's going to be hosted in a place of your choosing. However, that's not what I mean. I'm actually talking about which platform are they going to be using? Is this Skype, Zoom, Teams? Are you familiar with it? Have you used it? We'll talk about testing it in just a second, but just making sure you know which platform it is and download anything that you need to download in advance. The other piece is when will it be? So this, of course, is obvious. You want to know when the interview is. But most importantly, in a virtual world, you're probably talking to people that are not in the same time zone as you. So just a side note or a professional tip is just make sure that the time that you have is the correct time in the time zone that you're in. So that way you can adjust if needed. Why is attire so important? Well, just as the Rosen College has always taught me when I was a student, and I definitely know they're still communicating this to students today, professional attire, especially in an interview, is very important. So for us, I think that, it's very easy to fall into the virtual trap where you are home, you're comfortable. So, maybe you have yourself a suit jacket and a tie, but then you're wearing shorts or something like that. I always like to recommend to get you into the right headspace to make sure that you're fully dressed and ready to go. Even put on some shoes, something to get you into the mindset that this is a professional thing that you're about to do. This is something that needs to help you feel confident and comfortable. So of course, you want to show them. And we've all seen those videos on YouTube of news anchors that are now working from home, and they stand up and they're wearing shorts or something. It's just something funny. It's not something that you want your hiring manager to notice. You want to make sure that you're showing them that you do everything all the way through. So attire is very important, particularly in colors as well. So you do know that some colors are brighter than others. I would not recommend something of the neon variety in colors when you're on camera, because sometimes it could just distract or the lighting can mess that up. So as basic as you can get, as professional as you can be, I think that that would be your best choice. Now for the space perspective, where are you going to be? So we're going to talk about this. So who will be around you? Really important to understand who's going to be in the house or in the office or wherever it is that you're doing your interview, making sure that you let anybody else that'll be there know that you are actually going to be doing an interview and that you're going to need everybody to be really quiet. That's such a huge thing to do, because sometimes without even knowing, they could distract you or they could appear on camera. We've seen those YouTube videos too. Now, what do you need to be successful? I personally like to keep a notepad and a pen close by if I need to take some notes. I even ask them if it's okay, if they mind if I take notes in the beginning of my interview, because I just like to make sure that I'm, taking note of something that I either need to ask later or something that I want to remember. But in the world of presenting, then I have off camera here my notes to make sure that I'm hitting everything that I wanted to make sure I told you today. So, anything that you need to be successful, I absolutely believe that you can prepare yourself in advance so that way you're not caught off guard in the interview itself. Where is the best place? That's really up to you. Obviously, someplace quiet, someplace that doesn't have too many things in the background that are distracting, right? So keeping in mind anything in regards to maybe your pets or, other people or kids or, whoever's around, just make sure that it's there. Also be aware of your surroundings, right? Is it messy behind you? Could that show some disorganization maybe? I have a mirror behind mine, making sure that they not only see something professional right behind me, but what are they catching in that mirror, right? So that mirror is something that is something to be aware of. Same thing with windows. If you have windows close by, you can't control everything that happens out there. So perhaps you'd want to close the blinds like I did for mine. Anything that can help you, but the best place, obviously, you decide what that is for you. Now, when are you going to be able to test it? I always recommend testing your application that they gave you, whether it's Teams or Zoom or whatever, making sure that you go in there in advance. And that way you can make sure that your computer recognizes it, that if you have to create an account, you do that in advance. Test your microphone, test your camera, make sure everything is good to go before the interview, not a few moments before, but really see if you can do it in advance if it allows you to do so. If not, at least give yourself 5 to 10 minutes. It's always great to show up early for an interview, even if it is virtual. But of course, that also gives you a chance to try to work some things out. Don't forget to charge your computers, things like that. And why is the background crucial? We just talked about it. So as far as your actual background, what's behind you, making sure that there's nothing distracting back there, but also there are a lot of virtual backgrounds that people like to use. And I just like to make sure that those are considered to be professional, not too cluttered, not too crazy. Now Zoom has backgrounds that are actual moving backgrounds, right? That's really big. A lot of them use like a green screen type technology where they kind of put you into a virtual environment. So if you're wearing certain colors, it makes it morph a little bit differently. So just, test out your virtual background before, make sure people can see you and see the full you, not cutting off your forehead or anything like that. But obviously that'll come when you test it, which was the bullet point before. You'd want to test your background as well if you're using a virtual one to make sure that it works for you. Now, I did pull up on Indeed.com, which is, of course, a huge job board that provides lots of tips for people. The tips for you to be able to succeed in your interview, these are their 10. I agree with all 10 of these. I put them up there for a reason, of course, but I do have some of my own that I wanted to address as well. So doing your research, that's number one on their list. That's number one on my list. So making sure that you know what the company is that you're applying for, what are they all about, what the position you're applying for, etc. But making sure that you are well versed in what it is that they're looking for so that you can A, be able to talk to it if they ask you, but B, also show them that you are what they're looking for. Putting your phone away, I'm not even going to spend too much time on that because your phone should not be anywhere near you. I would definitely put it on silent. I would not recommend putting it on vibrate because, of course, that is a sound that can be heard. It can be picked up on microphones that are very sensitive. So be aware of that. Your best of scenarios is actually a great tip that I received from my manager almost 10 years ago now. And essentially, it is something that what you do in advance. So long before your interview, think about your top 10, maybe your top 5, anything in your career that is a huge, impressive highlight, anything in your school career, anything in work, anything that you've done volunteer-wise, something that you want to make sure that you can showcase to the hiring manager and just write them down, right? Have them close by, take a glance at them if you need to. But that is something that I would definitely recommend doing because when they start asking you questions, you can use that as a cheat sheet, if you will, to make sure that you're answering those questions with those specific scenarios, right? You want to make sure you highlight the best of your career and the best of you so that you can show them everything that you have to offer them. So having that close by is a big piece. Preparing your answers in advance. Obviously, you won't have all the questions that they're going to ask you, but there are some very popular ones, right? So as we did this webinar live with mentees and mentors just this morning, we had people saying that they were asked strengths and weaknesses, right? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Do you have any questions for me? Things like that, that you know that they're most likely going to ask you. You can even go on Google and ask what the most common interview questions are. I'm not saying everybody uses it, but if they do come up, you do want to be prepared for it. So if you're somebody that is, it takes a little bit of time to maybe come up with those kind of answers, or you like to maybe think about it a little bit more, look for those in advance and try to get those done for yourself. I think it would make your life a whole lot easier and make the whole situation a lot less stressful. And then answering questions like a star. So this is point number 4 on the Indeed list. And I just kind of want to elaborate and explain what a star answer is. So if you have questions that are coming to you that are behavioral based, right? So they're asking you questions like, tell me about a time when you got frustrated with a customer, or, you know, tell me a time when blah, 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 things like that. It's really a great best practice to try to answer these in the way of a star. What is a star? So as listed in the top 10 on the side, a star basically is how you would answer in the form of a story. So the S and the T would be the situation or the task that they're asking you about, describing that. The A would be an action, right? What action did you take to either make it happen, not make it happen, etc. And then the R is the result. So you not only want to tell them what you did, but you want to tell them what came of it in the end. That can be a list of stats, maybe a percentage or something that happened. Even just ending your story with something like, you know, I did this for this customer and, you know, they were so happy, they wrote a letter, something that can show you that your actions that you took were the right ones, and then, you know, here's what came of it. So if you answer in the form of star, then you're really telling them a story as your answer, and that's a lot more engaging and a lot more detailed. So it really does help them, give them the full picture as to how you would handle this scenario at their company in the future. And then be specific. So particularly with star, but honestly with anything, you don't want to answer a question of, you know, tell me a time you got frustrated with a customer with, oh, yeah, I get frustrated all the time. No, you don't want to say that. If that's you, you may want to reconsider your career choices. But, you know, those kind of answers of, oh, that happens all the time, or, oh, yeah, no, I've experienced this a lot. And, you know, when I do it, I like to make sure that I'm level-headed and I do this. They're asking for something specific, right? So think of a specific time in your career that this happened to you and try to cite that story, because again, past behavior is going to be able to predict potentially future behavior. And that's really the whole point of those behavioral based questions. Be confident, not arrogance. I have had quite a few people that are really overdoing it in the confidence phase and it's just coming off as cocky or arrogant. So make sure that you are expressing that confidence because that's a huge piece, especially in a virtual world when you're not face to face and you don't have the person in front of you to read off, at least with the virtual world. Hopefully their cameras on and you can see them. But it is most important for you to be able to be as confident as possible, maybe even a little bit more so than in person, so that way it projects through the camera onto the other person's screen. And then follow up. Follow up is huge. So you want to make sure that you have the name of the person. Hopefully you have their email. It's okay to ask. If I have any additional questions that come up later, may I email you or may I contact you, or who would be the best person to contact about that? Most of the time, I want to say more than 95% of the time, they will give you some sort of form of contact, as they should. If they don't, that's okay. You can leave that alone. That's a little, interesting, but I wouldn't force it too much. But hopefully you get something so that you can write a thank you note. Virtually, it's very difficult, as we're not really sending anything through the mail too much anymore. Although when that comes back, I would recommend doing that. A handwritten note goes a long way. But in this case, at least an email, something that can show them that you appreciate the time that they took, that you're really excited about the position, and that you're hoping to hear from them soon. Make sure it's professional as you can, addressing them correctly, and making sure that you have your contact information as well, just in case they want to reach back out to you. Hopefully they'll have it with your application, but I always just like to put it in there as a final touch. So I wanted to go through a few tips on how to use LinkedIn to your advantage. So there have been a lot of questions coming from mentees in regards to, how do I find somebody if I'm trying to apply for something specific? How can I get more information? How do I find the name of the hiring manager, etc.? This is no guarantee that it's going to work for every scenario, but I wanted to give you an example on how you can use search strings in LinkedIn that can help you find, at least hopefully get you close to what you're looking for. So in the scenario on the screen right now, let's pretend that I am somebody that is trying to get into the wedding event industry, and I've identified Walt Disney Company as the company that I'd like to work for, right? Where do I even start? Well, number one is I would go into LinkedIn and I would look up the Walt Disney Company, just as shows on your screen. When you do that, then you're going to see how many employees on LinkedIn or cast members in Walt Disney's world list themselves as a cast member of the Walt Disney Company. In this case, it's 124,000 plus people. That's a lot of people to sift through. So I'm going to show you how to narrow that down even further. So by having the name or the company profile up, when you click on the see all 124,000 LinkedIn employees, it's actually going to have that as an automatic search. So you'll see under current companies, it's highlighted here. So it's sifting through Disney people. So right now we're looking at 131,000 people that have at some point or another listed themselves as working for Disney. In this case, I'm trying to find somebody who currently works at Disney in their wedding department. Before we go further, I just wanted to give you some do's and don'ts. So obviously, you definitely want to take the time to narrow down, and I'm about to show you exactly how to do that. If you're trying to connect with somebody, definitely respect and know if they don't want to connect with you and you go back to check on it and it doesn't show pending anymore, don't try it again. Go ahead and move on to the next person. If you are going to connect, include a personalized note with it. That is something that is huge, especially if you don't know the person. It gives them an idea of who you are and why you're looking to connect. For a don't, I would not connect with somebody unless you know that this is going to be a quality connection from you. So i.e., don't go through every single person, 131,000 people, and just start connecting with every single person because they said that they worked for this company. Making sure that you actually know who you're trying to connect with, in the sense of that you know that it could be a valuable connection for you. And then also too, don't send generic notes. So if you're going to copy and paste and just use the same note for everyone, that may have been a best practice in the past, but now, it's all about that personal touch to help you stand out, particularly in a virtual environment. So just make sure that you can personalize it, whether you use their name, specifically tell them why you're, trying to connect with them, etc. Now here are 3 screenshots that I can kind of show you. So again, I clicked on Walt Disney Company, I clicked on the employees themselves. Now I can sift through employees with additional search terms. So going broad and starting my way in, I started with events, right? So I'm looking to be a wedding person. I want to try to plan weddings for Disney. How do I figure that out? Well, if I put in events, there's 17,000 results in that search. So let's delete that and try again. If I put weddings, there's 935, still too many to sift through. But as I look at those people under wedding, for example, the first person here, it says Disney Fairy Tale Weddings. Now I know what their department is called, right? So if I use Disney Fairy Tale Weddings, like in the last screenshot, 40 results come up. Now that's something that I can go through and actually look through 40 people to see who may be in the position I'm interested in, maybe who the manager is or the director. It'll give me an idea of who is best to connect. Again, you want quality connections. And that's kind of how you narrow it down. Most importantly, every company names their people differently. So where some companies name them, part of the Disney Fairy Tale Weddings, you may have somebody that calls them party coordinators, wedding coordinators. It just depends. So regardless of what company you're in, I would always recommend getting in the habit of starting with broad searches and narrowing it down so that way you can understand what their verbiage is that they use so that you're finding the right people that you're looking for. And the tip below is just that. So making sure you're starting broad and working your way through. Some tips for LinkedIn overall. So obviously, if you're connecting with people on LinkedIn, they're going to see your profile, making sure that you have an appropriate photo, a headshot, not something crazy like you dancing at a bar or something, unless that's the job you're going for. But definitely would not have that as your photo. Making sure that your cover photo is something that's appropriate. And then also to just making sure that the professionalism is always in the back of your head. People can see every single activity you do on LinkedIn, every post that you've liked, everything that you've commented on. So making sure that you're keeping LinkedIn as professional as possible, knowing that employers or potential mentors or just anybody can see what's going on. It's very different from other social media platforms. So just utilize this and keep in mind that it is a virtual resume. So you want to always be positive. You always want to be uplifting. You definitely want to showcase what your true personality is in this, but being mindful that that anybody can see it. We already talked about quality over quantity in your connections. And then one bit I wanted to note for UCF is that UCF actually has a partnership with LinkedIn Learning. If you don't know what LinkedIn Learning is, I use it all the time. It is basically a place with virtual classes. I know we're so over all those. However, these are really great and they're free for UCF students as long as you connect using your UCF.edu email address. So I would definitely look into it. Once you actually complete an actual certification, not just a class, but a full certification, those badges keep getting added on to your LinkedIn profile automatically if you click that button to do so. So it's a great way to show people that you continue your learning and that you are trying to do specific tasks or specific classes that can help you in your career moving forward. So hopefully you take advantage of that. And then that's it. So from there, I'm just going to ask that you use this QR code to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, I'm always happy to do that. If you have any Q&A, so I have A's all the time. I have your answers. If you have any questions, please make sure that you message me. I'm happy to do that. I just added this meme because it is so funny. Please keep this in mind to always be focused on the task at hand. So the interviewer says, so where do you see yourself in 5 years? And you say, oh, my biggest weakness is listening. Obviously, you're not listening. And believe it or not, that happens all the time. Take it from a recruiter. So I just want to thank you so much for listening to this presentation. Hopefully you got some information out of it. I look forward to seeing you on LinkedIn and connecting with you. If I can be of any assistance in the future, please let me know. But good luck with your virtual interviews and other interviews as that starts to come back, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for joining me.